With the new ruling with the NAR, we got to ratchet up our game a bit, and this is a wonderful time to really just kind of talk about how we can talk about what's occurring with NAR. Now, I think on April 3rd, did you give me that date, Dan? The next one of the Wisdom Wednesdays. We've been planning all along here to put together a manual, a little book of language for the NAR ruling, and then the ruling came down, and quite honestly, we've been anticipating this at By Referral Only. The conversation around disruption has been going on for a long time. We've been talking about this for a long time. And thankfully, it's pretty much a non-issue for most of you. And let me just start there and just hold the context that you're neutral. You don't take a side on this at all. You're neutral. This is life. Life is happening. This is circumstances outside your control. You can't change that. All you can do is just respond to it. Now, I'm watching a lot of real estate agents who are unskilled react to this, and they're reacting out of fear. They're reacting out of a lot of anxiety. And one of the things that makes you unique and highly competitive is you're neutral. You stand in a neutral position. As a matter of fact, the ruling is kind of what you've been doing the entire time. You have always met with a seller and discussed what they were going to do to compensate you. Now, part of the conversation is we don't have to pay for the buyer anymore. That was kind of built in as an assumption, and it was kind of built into the system, is that the seller paid the buyer's commission. The seller got rewarded. Now, we still have to attract buyers, and we have to discuss, what are we going to compensate them? If we're going to compensate them, how we're going to compensate them. And we got to include that into our conversation. But nothing's changed, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. I represent your interest. Now, on the buyer's side, I represent your interest, and we have to figure out a way how we're going to compensate for the efforts that I'll put in. We got to just figure that out. And that's just a good conversation. And so I'm going to encourage you, as we start to unfold this happening, you got to get a bigger view of it than like in the trenches view. I want you to get a bigger view of this. So let me just stop there for a minute. And Dan, just tell me what are your thoughts on what I just said?
I love what you say, because number one, we get to be neutral. We're not defensive. We're not saying that we were part of any judgment that happened, because we're not. We're saying that the great news for you and I is everything stays the same. Everything that we've always done together. I have always represented your interests as the person who is selling their home. And what's happened is there's been a change for the way that the buyer's agent is compensated that doesn't impact us. It really is what we have been doing all along. So I love the fact that we're not jumping to conclusions, and we're not making something bigger than it is, especially if they're not talking about it.
There's an opportunity, something coming at you that you have no control over. How are you going to react? Skillfully is how you're going to react. And that's our intention, is that continually give you the language and the guidance to help you become really skillful at communicating to your clients. So that's the bigger picture, Dan, like when you look down on it. So I would say, don't be too surprised that this is happening. The chatter around disrupting our industry has been going on for a long time. The big money thinks they may have just hit on something, play with our compensation. But what they don't recognize is when you have a relationship with people, it changes the dynamics. When you don't have relationships with people, you really do feel the fear and the anxiety. You really do. Like, try to explain to somebody what's occurring when you don't have a relationship with them. It's a very different conversation than when you've helped a friend and a family member, and you've helped them in the past, or they're part of your network and you've been communicating with them regularly. You're doing your complete communications. You've been inviting them to events, and on and on and on. You have the space to educate and inform them, which is pretty exciting.